I'm Inbal. I'm from the Klarna team in Tel Aviv. I've been working in Klarna for over 4 years, and during most of this time, I was working with Ruby on Rails. Now, if you've used Ruby before, it would probably not surprise you to learn that Ruby is designed to make programmers happy. This pretentious saying comes straight from Ruby's creator, who's proud of going through great complexity to make the language appear to smile at its coders. How did he do it? How do you make a programming language be something that makes people happy? Well, one thing I've noticed about Ruby is that it's much like a good friend. It understands me. Here's an example. Say I'm inside the Ruby console and I want to get out. So, what do? I type exit, or I type quit. I can use parentheses, exclamation mark, whatever, it doesn't matter. Ruby gets me. Try to do this in the Python console, and what will you get there? This. I mean, come on. Obviously, it knows what I want to do, right? So just get me out of here. Why do you have to be so strict about it? So yeah, Ruby understands me. I can talk to it. I can say, hey, print a string. Well, unless, of course, the string is empty, because that would not make sense. It's much more conversational than, for example, the Java version. And that's another thing about Ruby. It tries to be like pseudocode that runs. And it turns out that that's really the Ruby way of doing things. And you can see this approach in practice in basically any popular Ruby library. Take RSpec, for example, the popular test framework. So to set an expectation in a test, you would simply write something like expect this to be that. So, for example, expect array to include element, or expect response to be unauthorized. You can also create your own. If you define a valid method on your object, RSpec lets you say, expect my object to be valid. If instead of valid I were to define a panda method, I would be able to say, expect my object to be panda. But more than that, I can actually say, expect my object to be a panda, or expect my object to be an owl, because someone went through the trouble of creating these aliases. Because that's the Ruby way, pseudocode that runs. Okay, so now let's talk about Rails. Rails creator, he really liked this Ruby approach of paying attention to what makes a developer happy. So he went completely crazy with it. So what do we have in Rails? Let's see. Well, we have the inflector class, which allows me to write comment.pluralize. Well, comment is easy, but what about person or child? Of course, this class knows just enough English to support all that. What else? In Ruby, if I wanted to access the first or last elements of an array, I can use the first and last method instead of the ugly square brackets. But that was not enough for Rails. No. In Rails, you also have the methods second through fifth. And it stops there. There is no sixth method, but there is a 42. Because we all know that that's the answer to life, the universe, and everything. So you've got to admit that that makes you a little bit happier. Now, and of course, I have to mention my personal favorite, which is 2 days ago, 10 years from now, even date yesterday. To me, these things are the very definition of pseudocode that runs. And let's look at a bit more complex example from Active Record. So take a look at it for a second. If you're not familiar with Ruby, this might seem odd, almost as if it's not a programming language at all. But once you realize that these are just method calls without parentheses, you're basically good to go. So Ruby is like that. It's full of optical illusions. And I use the term illusions because many things that appear to be simple and beautiful are actually an acrobatic mess under the hood. So making Ruby this way did not come for free. But that's exactly why it's worth appreciating. This feeling that the language talks to you, that it flirts with you a little, is a big part of what drew people to Ruby, and still draws them today. So, to me, the takeaway here is that whenever you build something that others will use, a library, an API, whatever, try to also pay attention to what would make people happy when they use it. You know how they say that a good developer is a lazy developer? Well, don't forget that a good developer is also a happy one.